Mm. Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَمَنْ يُضْلِلْ فَلَنْ تَجِدَ لَهُ وَلِيًّا مُرْشِدًا. That person who is on the path of Dalala, then you will not find for them any wali and any murshid. Wali here means any friend, and murshid means any guide, any person who's going to give them that rushd, that hidayah. And uh, the situation was that after seeing the signs, the mushrikeen in Makkah, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is anticipating the end of the story, that the mushrikeen who are being told the story about the people of the Kahf, having seen and heard about these signs, all of them should have accepted Iman. They should have now brought Iman. They should have, they should let go of their idol worship. However, they won't do so. And the person attains Hidayah only out of the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hidayat comes from the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even though these mushrikeen who asked that tell us the story, they're being told what the story is, they're being told what the miraculous signs are there in the story, but they will still persist on their zalalat and their shirk and their kufr, and they will not be willing to leave their shirk. They'll keep challenging you, or the Prophet ﷺ, keep asking you, or the Prophet ﷺ, to tell stories. So they're not going to be guided by this. فَلَن تَجِدَ لَهُ وَلِيًّا. And these are the people who will not have any wali. Now, wali is a word that comes frequently in the Quran. Wali, like we said, means a friend, but not just any friend, a deep friend, an intimate friend. And in the positive context, this word wali is used to be a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, waliullah. Like there is a ayat where Allah Ta'ala said, Ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. There's a beautiful riwayat where Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala narrates that once the Prophet ﷺ said to the Sahaba that there's some servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who will not be amongst the Anbiya, nor will they be amongst the Shuhada, but on the day of Qiyamah, the rank that they will get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be so high that the Anbiya alayhi salam and the Shuhada will be looking up at them. They will be looking at those people and they will be wondering that who are these people? So the Sahaba Ikram, they asked that, oh, that Ya Rasulullah, man hum, that who are those people? Uh, they were curious and tell us about them. And the Prophet ﷺ said that these were those who loved one another for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they had a relationship with each other, not because of any being related to each other by blood or by kinship, nor were they related to each other because of any wealth, like a contractual financial dealing, that buying and selling. They're not related to each other in any of those ways. They simply are connected to each other out of their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They just love each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, yani the relationship is fillah lillah billah, in the name of Allah, for the sake of Allah, and about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ continued that they will be placed on the mimbar of Noor. And when all the other people, there'll be so many other people will be scared and will be anxious and worried about what will happen to them on that day. These people will be fearless. They will not be scared. They will not be sad. They will not be scared. And then the Prophet recited this ayat of the Quran that Allah inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. That these are indeed the awliya, the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There will be no fear upon them. There will be no sadness in their heart. No external threat and danger and fear, and no internal worry, anxiety, depression that they will experience. They are the friends of Allah, the wali, the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second word that is used here is murshida. Murshid means any guide. And again, whether wali or murshid, there are certain ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ which give us indications about how this word is used in a positive way, right? Someone who helps a person come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like a guide, like a murshid who helped, a person who's going to help us come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guide us on this path towards Allah, help us improve ourselves, help us in increasing in the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in leaving sin, in drawing and attaining that nearness to Allah. So murshid, in one hadith, the Prophet said that khiyaru ummati alladhina idha ru'u dhukir Allah. That amongst my ummah, the best people from within my ummah are those that when you look at them, you are reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are the people who are so strong, have such a strong nisbat with Allah, such a strong connection and relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that simply by looking at them, you think about Allah. There are people like that. If I say the word Elon Musk, right? So just the word Elon Musk, and you're thinking Twitter, you're thinking SpaceX, you're thinking, billionaire, you're thinking wealth, right? So he has this nisbat with all of these things, these businesses with the money, that someone takes the word Elon Musk and takes the name Elon Musk, and you think of someone. These people have such a strong nisbat with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such a strong relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you look at them and you think about Allah. Allahu Akbar. Imagine what kind of a strong relationship these people have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That just looking at them, they haven't even spoken, they haven't even said anything to you. You haven't listened to the lecture, their bayan, listened to the writing, read the writing, just simply looking, just simply gazing at their face. And that is enough to remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then in another hadith, the Prophet said that khiyarukum man dhakkarakum billah. That the best of you is one that simply looking at them reminds you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, makes you remember Allah. And when he speaks, it increases your knowledge. وَزَادَ فِي عِلْمِكُمْ مَنْتِقُهُ. That his speech increases you in ilm, in khashiyat. Ilm means khashiyat. Remember, ilm is not information. Ilm is knowledge. Knowledge is khashiyat. Khashiyat is a spiritual quality. It's the fear of Allah. If a person increases in their ilm, and one should be checking whether I'm also increasing in my khashiyat and my fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. And if the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also increasing, then we can be content that yes, what I'm acquiring is ilm. On the other hand, if a person is studying ilm and they're increasing in ilm, but they don't increase in the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the khashiyat of Allah ta'ala, then we are actually not getting ilm. What we're getting is simply information. Ilm is something different. Ilm increases a person in the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how Allah ta'ala has defined ilm in the Quran. Innama yakhshallahu min ibadihi al-ulama. That out of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ones who are knowledgeable, who have ilm, who are the ulama, they are the ones who have the greatest type of fear. They have khashiyat. They have this fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this azmat, this might, this majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inside their heart. And that's what prevents them from committing sin. This, when you have khashiyat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then a person stays away from sin. Just like when a person is sad, sadness makes a person leave food and drink. Children become sad that I failed my exam. They don't feel like eating and drinking. Sadness makes a person leave food and drink. The fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a person leave sin. So one reason why a person may not be able to leave sin in their life, why we might be struggling to leave sins in our life, is because we don't have that fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that khashiyat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this khashiyat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that the Prophet used to ask for, would make special du'as, standalone du'as, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this ni'mat, that Allah bless me with your fear, with this khashiyat. Allahumma inni as'aluka khashyatika min al-ghaybi wa shahada. Allah, I ask you for a khashiyat in my private life and my public life, when I'm all alone and when I'm with other people. Allahumma qsim lana min khashyatika ma tahulu bihi baynana wa bayna ma'asiyatik. Allah, grant me khashiyat, place khashiyat as a barrier between me and my sins. Place khashiyat in between me and my sins. So we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this khashiyat, and always remember this, that we should be tracking ourselves. That if I'm increasing, we're studying, alhamdulillah, Allah ta'ala gave us the tawfiq, we're studying Quran. So we hope that through this Quran, the studying, teaching, we can get some ilm. But how do we know that whether we're really benefiting from this lecture, from these lectures, from these sessions, and we're really getting ilm? Is that we need to see the alamat. There are certain signs. The signs of khashiyat, are there the signs of ilm, the signs of khashiyah? Do we see those signs within our heart? Are we, once we get this ilm, are we becoming more regular in our salah? Are we increasing in our fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we trying to make an effort to stay away from sins? Are we making an effort not to misuse our screens? And if we are, then it means that we are going in the right direction. If I want to take a train, let's say from East Coast, US to the West Coast, New York to California, I will be, watching that, okay, what are the stations that are coming in between? And, if I see that, okay, we have Pennsylvania, then Michigan, then Illinois, that means I'm moving in the right direction, right? It's westward. But on the other hand, if I don't see those stations and it's just going up, right? Then it's the wrong direction. I'm not heading where I'm supposed to. And we can track our journey, that there are stations. Am I seeing those stations on the journey or not? If I can see those stations, those cities, those states, it means that I'm going in the right direction. Exactly in the same way, we are in this journey of acquiring ilm, trying to come close towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we should be doing muhasaba. We should be taking ourselves to account and seeing that, do I see these alamat of khashiyat, signs of khashiyat within me or not? If I can see those signs within my life, if there is more sunnah, more sharia, more taqwa, if I'm staying away, making an effort to stay away from sins, then alhamdulillah, I have those signs, I have those alamat, and I'm heading in the right direction. But if I'm lazy about my salah, if we're not able to safeguard our gaze, we're committing all types of sins on the screen, we are backbiting, it's easy for us to backbite others, then it means that we don't have those alamat, we don't have those signs, we're heading in the wrong direction. So this whole journey, we should be monitoring, we should be doing muhasaba, taking ourselves to account. This is what real ilm is. That ilm translates into khashiyat, the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the awliya, the wali, they are that when you look at them, you are reminded of Allah when they speak. It increases your ilm. And when you look at their amal, third thing, when you look at their action, then you feel motivated to work for your own akhirah. That their action gives you an incentive that you start working for your own akhirah. Their action motivates you, reminds you of akhirah. So this is the way we can judge the company and the beneficial company, the company that we should try to seek out, company of such people who can then help us grow in our ta'alluq with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our mashayikh in the commentary of this ayat, they mention one more thing. They say that that person whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abandons, that Allah ta'ala just leaves that person without becoming his friend, wali, without becoming his murshid, without allowing him to benefit from other people who could guide him, depriving him of the company of the sadiqeen, the salihin, the truthful, the pious people, the righteous people. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just abandons a person like that, it means that tawfiq has been taken away from that person. And now that person is on this path of dhalala. This tajalli of Allah dhalala is upon that person, and very difficult then for a person to come back. There are so many people from Quraysh Makkah, so many people who came from the family of Nabuwat. Today we speak about family matters, your lineage matters, nobility, lineage, all of that. These were people belonging from the family, the immediate family, the uncles of the Prophet ﷺ. And from morning till evening, they were in the company of the Prophet ﷺ. Sohbah. But because they did not have that istidad, that ability, they lost that ability. They were deprived. They lost that ability because every time they would be, Allah would send a reminder to them, they would spurn that reminder. And when they continued spurning and rejecting and denying all the signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they lost that istidad for iman. They lost that tawfiq. They become deprived, they become mahroom. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just let them be on the path that they chose for themselves. They went all the way on the other side, became enemies to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And on the other hand, the flip side, you see people far away from Makkah Mukarramah, coming from slave dynasties, Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu ta'ala an, coming from Abyssinia, Sayyidina Salman Farsi radiallahu ta'ala an, coming from Faris, sold as a slave over and over and over again. Far away. Hazrat Suhaib radiallahu ta'ala an, coming from Rome, Constantinople, Sham. They're coming from far away, these distant regions, and they come into the sohbah, the company of the Prophet ﷺ, and by that barakah, they had that istidad, that ability. And that ability, they had that within them. And when they came in the company of the Prophet ﷺ, that company, the barakah of that company just ignited that flame that they already had in their heart. You need to come with a flame. You need to come with a desire. You need to come to such gatherings with a yearning, with a with a want, with a wish, with some fire within. And then what happens is when a person comes in the company of the righteous, the pious, the mashayikh, they just ignite that fire, ignite that flame. The flame is already there. That tawfiq is already there. Their ability, their istidad is already there. They just ignite it. So that is what happens. Now, this is something. Now, the second thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned here, the second ease, is now the next ayat. So remember, there are 5 types of ease, 5 kinds of ease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to the people of the Kahf. Now, second. وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا وَهُمْ رُقُودٌ وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا. And you would think that they were awake. وَهُمْ رُقُودٌ, while the reality is that they were asleep. So this was the second ease, that they seemed awake. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what this means is that, some people speculate that perhaps they were sleeping with their eyes open, and if you would just walk past them, it would have looked like they're awake. And another meaning is that perhaps, and this also has a bit of more textual basis, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala resurrects them, Allah brings them back, they would be in such a state in which they haven't aged at all. So you would think that these people who spent a few moments, they were just, they were really not, sleeping. Either way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that if you would have seen them, you would think that they were awake while they were actually asleep. So this was the shan, the haiba, the robe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given to the people of the cave, that if people were to pass by, they would look at them and they would feel a bit of azmat in their own hearts. To look at these people, they're awake. There's a certain type of robe, a certain type of their demeanor, their manner, this shan, this majesty, the manner in which they were sleeping. And this was done so that no one would disturb them. No one would be able to interrupt them in their sleep. And the Mashaykh, they explain that actually this is true, number one, for the sleep of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam. The Prophet sallallahu in Shama'il Tirmidhi, there is a beautiful hadith where Amma Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she asked the Prophet sallallahu that it happened that the Prophet sallallahu was sleeping, was resting, and then he woke up and then he prayed salah. So Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she asked the Prophet sallallahu that you did not make wudu or something like that. And the Prophet sallallahu said that my eyes were sleeping, but my heart was awake. And that's a very important line to remember. That my eyes were resting, sleeping, but my heart was awake. The heart was awake means that the heart was remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The heart was never heedless. The heart of the Prophet ﷺ was never heedless, even in sleep, even during sleep. And those who follow the Prophet ﷺ by the barakah of ittibai sunnah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses them with that state as well, that they might be resting and their eyes might be sleeping, but their heart is still doing dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their heart is still alive, not just alive like medically, but their heart is alive in spiritually as well. Their heart is not heedless, it's attentive and attentively remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even while they're outwardly sleeping. And subhanallah, I'll share with you a story that I heard directly from my own Shaykh, Shaykh Adaji. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed our Shaykh with a very high maqam and rank in wilaya. And there's countless ulama and mashayikh are among his students and from all over the world, and Dalum Dioband and Dalum Karachi and many other top madaris in the world. The teachers, the teachers of hadith are among his students. So one time, this was in one of the trips of Umrah in Makkah Mukarramah. The Sheikh mentioned this story, very personal story about his marriage. And he said that when I got married and it was my first night, I prayed my namaz, salah, and then I talked with my wife, we had a conversation, and then we slept. And then he said that when I woke up, my wife, we call her Amma Jan, she approached me and she said that I want to do bayah with you. I want to do bayah with you. And the Sheikh said, I was a bit surprised that what happened. I was happy that, she wants to have this bayah means like a spiritual connection, that I want to take you as my teacher in guiding me, in counseling me, in helping me increase in my love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a sunnat amal. The Sahaba Ikram used to take bayah with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's mentioned in the Quran. The Sahabiyat would take bayah with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sahaba would take bayah with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this tradition has continued up till our time as well, that a person might take bayah with this intention to increase in the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, take someone as a guide, as a tutor on this path of dhikr, this remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that a person can draw close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. So when she said that I want to take you as my tutor, as my sheikh, as my guide on this path and help me increase in my love for Allah, the sheikh said I was very happy that my wife, she herself is saying this, but I was also surprised at what happened. What caused her to say this, to make this request? And then I asked her what happened. And she said that, we were sleeping and at night I heard a sound like someone is saying Allah, Allah, Allah. And I looked around, there was no one. And then when I focused, I realized that the sound is coming from you. So I came near to you and I saw that from your heart, your chest, this sound was coming. Your heart was saying Allah, Allah, Allah. And from that moment onwards, I made this intention that when you wake up, I'll ask you that I want to take you as my sheikh. So when a person works on themselves and when a person works in them and they do zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like that. Now our Shaykh Azaji has done zikr, abundant zikr, zikr kasir. You reach a certain level where even when you are sleeping, your heart is still remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is not one story, there are several stories of like that in our own ummah. Mashaykh, who, when they do zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they reach such a maqam, such a rank, such a state where the heart is preoccupied with the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. that Abul Hasan Kharakani Rahmatullah, alayhi, one of the great awliya of this ummah, used to say, make dua to Allah Ta'ala and say that, oh Allah, you know that I swear by you and I make you a witness that I've spent 70 odd years of my life in such a state that in my heart, there was no one other than you. 70 plus years of my life in such a state that there was no one except you in my heart. And to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala witness over that. Allah Akbar, such a pure heart, such a heart that is preoccupied with the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is one lesson that we get here, that when a person, they do zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's why our mashayikh, they say one should have a daily regimen of doing zikr. Allah says in the Quran as well that udhkurullah dhikran kasira, that remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abundantly. And this is also the alamat and the sign that Allah mentions about the Sahaba, that rijalun la tulhihim tijaratun wala bay'un an zikrillah, that they're engaged in trade and commerce and buying and selling, but none of that distracts them from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their hearts are still, their spiritual hearts are still engaged in the zikr of Allah, while their tongue is busy doing trade and commerce. And same here as well, that a person can be sleeping, but their heart is engaged, is attentive, it's remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا. So we should make dua to Allah Ta'ala to grant us a heart that becomes alive, to remove the heedlessness from our heart. These are duas that we should be asking, that we should be making to Allah Ta'ala. A heart that is alive with His remembrance, the heart that is preoccupied with His remembrance, the heart which every single second, every single moment is doing zikr. This is a ni'mat, fanai qalbi, that the heart, even for a fraction of a second, doesn't become heedless of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every dua we should be asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this blessing. Then the third ease that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the people of Kahf, وَنُقَلِّبُهُمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ. We turned them on their sides, right and left. We rotated them on their sides, on their right side, on their left side. Now, if you want to take a contemporary take on this would suggest that this is actually a medical thing, that if somebody sleeps and such a long time, for 300 plus years, and if you ever seen somebody who's bedridden, they all, they get these different types of sores on their back sore, and on their body. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took part in their bodily preservation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved their body in such a way that Allah ta'ala rotated them on their sides, so that their side remains protected. It doesn't decay. It's not attacked by any insects, and they don't get any sores. So this was the third protection, the third ease that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the people of Kahf. The fourth ease, now comes the dog, the famous dog. وَكَلْبُهُمْ بَاسِطٌ ذِرَاعَيْهِ بِالْوَسِيدِ. And their dog had its forelegs stretched out to the doorstep. The word kalb, remember, this is as opposed to qalb. Very important tajweed rule here. You have a kaf and a qaf. Kaf, kalb with a kaf means dog, and qalb with a qaf means spiritual heart. وَكَلْبُهُمْ, and their dog, بَاسِطٌ, he had spread out, ذِرَعَيْهِ, his paws, its paws, or four legs, بِالْوَسِيدِ, at the doorstep. This wasid is another one of the mushkilat of the Quran. It's a difficult word. Wasid can mean the mouth or the opening of the cave, that he had spread out the paws at the opening of the cave. Some say that they were an inner chamber of the cave in a spacious area, and the dog had sprawled out slightly out by the outer area at the entry point, or you can say the courtyard. So either way, the scenery, the imagery is that the dog is there with them, and this dog had spread out its paws, the front paws, at the opening or the mouth of the cave. And this was done so that if a person, a stranger, any onlooker would try to come or enter the cave, they would see the dog, right, protecting them at the mouth. So any onlooker, they would get scared and they would flee from that space, from that place. Now, what is remarkable about this? In the Tafsir, it's mentioned that this dog had taken upon itself that I want to be with these pious men, these pious young men. I want to be in their sohbah. I want to be in their company. And he would hang around with these pious young men. Now, this is the barakah of keeping good company. One is that you keep the company of the righteous. Here, a dog is keeping the company of the righteous. This is a really important point to understand. And look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved this dog so much, this act of the dog so much, that Allah ta'ala mentioned that in the Quran in a very special way. That this dog, we don't know the people. The people are not mentioned up till now. Whether there were 4 of them, 5 of them, 7 of them. It doesn't mention how many people, but it mentions the dog. That there was a dog who was with them, who was in their company. The dog was keeping the company of these righteous people. Allah mentions that dog, and then Allah says that when we put these young men to sleep, we put this dog to sleep as well. Almost like them, with them. He's an animal, but he's sleeping with them. And just like these people would be sleeping for 300 plus years, the dog would also be sleeping for all of those years. So this mu'jiza, this miracle is happening not just with the people, with the Ashab-e Kahf. The mu'jiza is also the dog of the Ashab-e Kahf. The dog is also a nishani. It's also a sign from it's an ayah min ayatillah. Allah Ta'ala made this dog and ayah his sign as well. So beloved. And one more, furthermore, that it's mentioned in the Tafsir, that when these angels would come from the sky in order to change the sides of the Ashab-e Kahf, because obviously this was a 300 plus, it's not to sleep for 1 hour, 2 hour, 10 hour, 1 month, 1 year. They're going to sleep for 300 plus years in order to preserve their jism, their body, their sides. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent these angels who would come periodically from the sky, and they would change their sides of these men. And when these angels would come down from the sky to change the sides of these people, they would also change the side of this dog. Allahu Akbar. The side of the dogs, the karvat of the dog is also being changed by those same angels. Now, what type of an animal is a dog? In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that if this dog eats from your utensil, then that utensil becomes impure for you to use it. And if you want to purify that utensil, it's so impure because of the saliva of the dog. It's so impure that you'll have to wash it. You'll have to wash it 7 times with water. Not once, not twice, not thrice, 7 times with water. Wash that utensil, and then that's not even enough. 8th time, use some sand. Then and only then it will be purified. And yet, that same animal, that same dog, when it keeps the company of the righteous, the pious, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is willing to send angels from the sky to change the side of that dog. This is the barakah of keeping good company. And further, moreover, there's another thing mentioned about this dog in the tafsir, that this dog kept the company of the Ashab-e Kahf in the dunya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise this dog up on the day of Qiyamah, change the dog into a human, and make that that person then enter into Jannah and be with the Ashab-e Kahf in Jannah as well. This is an exceptional thing that will happen with this dog. Because for the other animals they won't make it to Jannah. Animals will just end their life when they will be resurrected. They will take any revenge if they have to from other animals. There will be complete justice within the animal kingdom as well. And then the animals will turn into dust. But not this dog. This dog will make it to Jannah. So if when the dog keeps the company of the pious, Allah Ta'ala raises the rank of that dog in such an incredible way, sending angels to change the side. Imagine if me and you, if humans, we keep the company of the pious, the righteous, the Siddiqeen and Salihin, then what inamat and favors would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send upon us? What blessings would come in our life? وَكَلْبُهُمْ بَاسِطٌ ذِرَاعَيْهِ بِالْوَسِيطِ. So we should try to seek out such sohbah. The sohbat of the awliya, the sohbat of the ulama, the sohbat of the salihin. There is a barakah in that sohbah. To make effort to seek out such opportunities, to be in the company of the righteous, in the pious. And view that as an honor, view that as a big treasure from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah blessed me. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the sohbah of the righteous and the pious is so valuable that whoever gets this, la yashka jalisu, they will not be shaki. Their iman will be protected. We did this before as well. Al-mar'u ma'a man ahabba. A person will be with whom they love. And in one lecture, one of the scholars was mentioning something else about this ayah, that normally we look down upon a dog. It's a dog, filthy animal. But all of us, we should always remember that there is an animal that is more ugly and more despicable than this dog which is within us, within all of us, and that is our nafs. This dog is outward. That dog is not so despicable and harmful as this animal that is within us, which is our nafs. If you don't discipline our nafs and purify our nafs and do tazkiyah of our nafs, this animal that is within us, this base desire, this base self, this animalistic nature, this nafs, this is way, way, way more harmful and dangerous for us. So, as opposed to looking down at the dog that I'm better than this dog, that is also a sign of ujub and arrogance. Our mashayikh, they say, acquire so much humility that you view yourself as lower and inferior to a dog. Because if you start thinking I'm better than the dog, then means that there's some germs of pride and arrogance are within you. Ujub is within you. Think too much of yourself. And why is that? As Tanvi Rahmatullah used to say, that imagine that even if you have done a lot of ibadah, but you don't know what will be the state in which you die. Whether your ibadah will be kubul or not, will be accepted or not. We don't know the ending. So many people, they lived lives of ibadah, hundreds of years of ibadah, and they were thrown away. Their ibadah was thrown back at them. Balam Ba'ur worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 300 years plus. And what was his ending? Allah rejected that ibadah. Shaitan, before he was Azazil, worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for thousands of years. And what was the ending? فَإِنَّكَ رَجِيمٌ, you are repudiated, you're thrown out. So, the Tanvi Rahmatullah used to say that you don't know about your ending. And since you don't know about your ending, view the dog to be better than you potentially. The dog is potentially better than you. Why? Because if your ending is good, then you are better than the dog. But if, Khuda na khasta, aliyadu billah, you have a bad ending, then the dog would be way, way, way better than you. Look at your ending. Look where you are going, and look what will happen to that dog. That dog is better than you. So don't look down upon the dog even, and worry about the nafs, which is trying to make you arrogant, which is trying to make you think too much of yourself. That should be your worry. That should be your battle. And our reality is that we look down upon these outer dogs, whereas we are taming our inner dog. We are raising this dog within us. This dog which is going to, this nafs ammara, which is going to make us rebel against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani one dog, the outer dog, will follow you, and you are following your inner dog. Very strong words, but it helps us understand what is the nature of this nafs. Why do we not take this nafs seriously? Why do we give it a freeway, a leeway? This nafs is a dangerous enemy. In fact, it's the most dangerous enemy. It's more dangerous than shaitan, and we take it so lightly. The dog, outer dog, is following me, is following us, and we are following this inner dog. So that outer dog you can see, you can save yourself, you can protect yourself from it. But this inner dog you can't even see, this inner animal you can't even see. And I'm deliberately using the word dog because we need to, we can't sanitize it. This nafs, we need to understand this is ammara. It compels, it commands a person towards sin. It's competing with Allah Ta'ala, competing with the command of Allah Ta'ala. We need to open up the ugliness of this nafs, this animalistic, beastly nature of this nafs. We can't even see this. We can't even see this inner animal. And then he said something else. That if the outer dog touches something, touches a utensil, a plate, a cup, and makes it impure because of its impure saliva. But you can always wash it with water and you can make it pure. But when your nafs makes you commit sin, and makes your eyes impure by looking, by misusing, by misdirecting your gaze. You can't use water to clean your eyes. It's not that simple. Using water to wash your dishes was easy. But purifying your eyes once you have committed sins is very difficult. Its tawbah would be required. Your tears would need to be shed. The outer dog is content with little bit of food, little bit of drink. But this inner animal, this nafs within us, this nafs wants more food, more drink, more. It wants that we should feed it properly. We are feeding our nafs, and this nafs is commanding us to rebel against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are happily feeding, happily taking care of this nafs. Whereas this nafs is taking us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The dog, you can scare the dog away. You can threaten the dog, and the dog goes away, doesn't want that same thing. Understands, takes the lesson. The nafs is so insistent, so persistent, that keeps coming back at you, keeps that thought of committing that sin keeps coming back. You repel it, again it comes back. You repel it, again it comes back. The nafs ensures, wants you to give in to that desire, wants you to give in to its desire and commit that sin. It will not rest until you commit that sin. It's difficult to discipline this nafs. So may Allah Ta'ala save us from the nafs, this animal that is within us. And may Allah Ta'ala save us from giving into the desires of our nafs. This Imam Shafi Rahmatullah used to say something ajib about the nafs. The nafs is something which will never be satisfied. It will always want more. You know, a dog, you give it something, becomes content. But the nafs just wants more and more and more. You allow it to commit sin one time, it wants to commit sin again and again and again. It gains a strength. Every single time you give in to the desires of your nafs, it becomes stronger. And finally, for a long time, if you have a dog, after some years, the dog becomes like a pet animal and is loyal to you, and very loyal. In some cases, very loyal. We hear stories, so many stories where the dogs are willing to give their life for the sake to protect their master. But nafs is such a creature that you can live up till 80 and nafs will always want to be disloyal to you. It has within it this notion of treachery. Will never be content and satisfied with you. Unless you really work hard and make your nafs mutma'inna. The nafs amara, it's within the nafs amara to do treachery, to be disloyal, to rebel. No matter what your age is, your 20s, 30s, 40s, 70, 80, if a person hasn't worked on their nafs, they haven't done tazkiyah of their nafs, they can be 80 and their nafs will be igniting them to commit sin. So this nafs has to be tamed. We have to make this effort to tame and discipline and purify, do tazkiyah of our nafs. This is a fard effort that every person has to make. Fard ilm, fard amal. So important that nowhere in the Quran Allah Ta'ala has taken qasam, 7 consecutive qasam. 7 consecutive qasam, just to highlight the importance that we, all of us, we need to do tazkiyah of our nafs. Qad aflaha man zakaha wa qad khaba man dassaha. That falah and success is for that person who purifies their nafs. And the fifth and the last is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the people of Kahf is لَوِ اطَّلَعْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, that if you had a look at them, لَوَلَّيْتَ مِنْهُمْ فِرَارًا, you would have fled away from them, وَلَمُلِئْتَ مِنْهُمْ رُعْبًا, and would have been filled with awe of them. What does this mean? That if you were to become aware of them, you were to look at them, you were to gaze at them, then you will flee from them. Firar means like else, but Allah says, فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. To firar towards Allah. Race towards Allah. So that's the word that Allah Ta'ala is using here. That if you were to see them, you were to race away from them. And you would be so awestruck at that sight that they're sleeping with their eyes perhaps open and the dog standing right at the opening, that you would have freaked out. So this was again part of Allah's nusrat, Allah's help, that Allah preserved them in such a awe-inspiring manner. Not just that I preserved, but the preservation would have struck awe in your heart. And if you were to have beheld them in that moment, you would have fled from them. وَلَا مُلِئْتَ مِنْهُمْ رُعْبًا. Ru'ba means that you would have been filled with wonder, with awe. You would have fled, but you would have also fled because you would have been filled with this wonder and awe at them. So this robe is also, this awe is also another blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In hadith that is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari Sharif, the Prophet ﷺ said, Nusirtu bi-ru'b masirata shahrin, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped me by giving me an awe and robe that would travel 1 month before me. That would travel a month journey before me. Yani the Prophet ﷺ would set out to travel, let's say there's an expedition to fight the non-Muslims, and the travel distance would be 1 month. And here the Prophet ﷺ would have just set out, but there would be robe and awe in the hearts of the enemy. Allah Ta'ala Allah Ta'ala helped the Prophet ﷺ by granting such a robe. In Tirmidhi Sharif, there is a hadith that man ra'ahu badihatan habahu, that the robe and the awe-inspiring personality of the Prophet ﷺ was such that if a stranger, someone who wasn't familiar with the Prophet ﷺ, was to see the Prophet ﷺ for the first time, suddenly, then they would be struck with awe in their heart. Their heart will be filled with wonder and awe. There's another hadith in Bukhari Sharif that Jabir bin Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala narrates that we were with the Prophet ﷺ in this war in Najd, and it was afternoon And the Prophet ﷺ wanted to rest. So the Prophet ﷺ, he took out his sword, kept his sword on, on the tree, and then there was a shade, a tree with a shade. So the Prophet ﷺ then uh, went to rest for some time under the shade of that tree. And we also went different shades, different points, different places to take a rest. So we were all resting. After some time, the Prophet ﷺ called us. We went and we saw that there was a Bedouin, an Arabi, who was sitting close by. And the Prophet ﷺ said that this Bedouin came to me and saw that I was sleeping. So he took my sword and then he woke me up. And when I woke up, I saw this person standing before me with a sword in his hand. And he said to me, "Man yamna'uka minni, ya Muhammad." That, "Oh Muhammad, today who will tell me, who will save you from me?" And the Prophet said, I replied, Allah, Allah. And that person, he sat down. It was a robe, and all that came into his heart, he sat down. And in another riwayat it's mentioned, he sought forgiveness. Another riwayat it's mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ took that sword from his hand and then said to him that, "Who will save you from me?" And then he said that, "Please forgive me." And later on, he went on to recite the kalima and became a Muslim. And the Prophet ﷺ then let that person leave. So this is the robe. People who live, who have taqwa in their lives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses them with this blessing of robe, this awe. Imam Malik rahmatullah, it's mentioned famously about him that Allah ta'ala blessed him with an awe-inspiring personality. Kana rajulan muhiban, was a person with a lot of awe and robe. In the 7th century Hijri, when the Mongols invaded in Baghdad, in one day, hundreds and thousands of Muslims were killed. And at that time, there was a city by the name of Darband. When the Mongols entered that city, by the time the Mongols entered, the Muslims, they had all evacuated, they had left that city. But there was this one sheikh there, whose name was Sheikh Jamaluddin Darbandi, rahmatullah. He was there in the masjid. The entire city is completely empty, just one person. So when the Mongol prince, he entered that city, he took all the wealth that people had left behind, and he told his soldiers that go and see if there is anyone alive here. So the soldiers, they went, they searched, they came inside the masjid. So they found Hazrat Darbandi rahmatullah. So they sent the news back to the prince that the entire city, there's no one except for this one person, Hazrat Darbandi rahmatullah. The prince said that, "Bring him to me and chain him and put handcuffs around his hand." So he was presented before the prince with handcuffed, chained. And the prince asked him that, "Didn't you know that we were entering the city?" He replied that, "Yes, we knew." He said that, "Why didn't you leave the city?" He said, "We were sitting in the house of Allah." So the prince said that, "You were saying that you were sitting in the house of Allah. Don't you know that we have swords with us?" Don't you know that we have chained you? These chains are around your hand and your feet. So the Darbandi Rahmatullah looked at those chains and said that these chains can do me no harm. And the prince is now surprised that, what do you mean? That these chains cannot harm you? He said, no, the prince is saying that no one can save you from us. No one can save you from these chains except us. We have the key. No one can set you free. At this point, Hazrat Sheikh Jamaluddin Darbandi Rahmatullah alayh, he came in a state of jalal. And they're standing right there in front of the prince. He said, these chains, you think they will stop me? And then in a loud voice, he said, Allah. And as he said the word Allah, the chains, they fell from his hand, from his feet. And there was a robe that came into the heart of the prince, and everyone who saw that spectacle were all filled with awe, filled with wonder. And the prince decided that I cannot mess with this person. He let him be. Gave him permission. In fact, he developed a fondness for the sheikh. And sometimes he would come seek counsel and guidance from that sheikh. Eventually, this was the start of how this whole Mongol empire converted, became Muslims. Allah changed their heart, changed their lives. They accepted Iman, accepted Islam. So Ashab Kahf, these young men, Allah Ta'ala gave them, blessed them with this robe. And this robe, in reality, is coming from the azmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more azmat and majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala you have in your heart, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you, will bless you with this ni'mat of robe. And other people will feel robe and awe, will be awed by you. The more you are awed by the azmat of Allah, the more other people will be awed by your azmat. So this is a gift that Allah Ta'ala gives to those people of taqwa, the people of Allah. Allah blesses them with such a robe, then big leaders, world leaders can come and sit in their company, and those world leaders are trembling while sitting in the company of Ahlullah. They're shivering while sitting in the company of Awliullah. This is the robe that Allah blesses them, that comes as a gift because of the azmat of Allah that they have in their heart. They don't view these world leaders to be anyone. They can do nothing, no harm, no benefit. When you have the robe of Allah, when you have the azmat of Allah, that Allah is the Malikul Mulk. He's the king of the kings. Then the kings of the dunya, they don't matter to you. You don't feel awe. You don't feel scared. They feel scared. They feel that fear. They feel that awe, that wonder. So this is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these were the 5 eases, the 5 ways in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assisted the people of the Kahf, Ashab Kahf. These were the 5 ways in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted their dua. وَيُحَيِّئْ لَكُم مِّنْ أَمْرِكُمْ مِرْفَقًا, that Allah gave them ease in their matter. So we will stop here. Inshallah, we'll continue with the next part next time. The next part is about now the Ashab Kahf will wake up from their sleep. Inshallah, we'll pick the story up next time. May Allah Ta'ala give all of us the tawfiq, the ability that we can implement these lessons in our own life. May Allah Ta'ala give us real ilm nafi, Give us khashiyat, the khawf. Give us this ni'mat of robe. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us that we can tame and do tazkiyah and discipline our nafs. May Allah ta'ala accept these niyat, these du'as, these intentions from all of us tonight. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.